Hey everyone, this Retro Manny here. In today's video, I want to show you this stencil tool in Rebelle by Escape Motions. It's an absolutely brilliant tool, and if you've used something like Photoshop, it might be similar to masking and shapes tool, but this has got some hidden features that just make it so powerful and so useful, especially with a scene like this. So you can see this cityscape is going to be brought to life with a bunch of windows and lights, and this was done very easily, and it's very reproducible, so you can do it over and over and over again, which I absolutely love about the tool. So first I'm going to create a very simple watercolor sky and then just carve out some simple structures on the cityscape using the oil brush, and then I'm going to press F10. Now F10 is a shortcut that will bring up your stencil tool menu. Now I'm using a stencil that I've already created just for the purpose of illustration, and you can see using these simple tools on the side here, I can expand it, rotate it, move it around. There's a bunch of little options there in the burger icon as well, so I can invert it, flip the shape horizontally, flip it vertically. I can add a border that'll prevent when I paint with this stencil from it going outside the lines. I can tile it, and this is the beauty, which you'll see in a moment, where it multiplies it, and then I can resize it so I can fit it anywhere over my entire scene. So I'm just adjusting it there to see what works best. I can lock or unlock the ratio as well, so I can stretch it, squash it if I want to. And lock it again, and you can also lock the actual stencil in place as well, so you can't move it. But I'm going to make mine a little bit further up there to adjust to fit the city, just looking for the right position for it to work. Okay, now what I'm going to do is make a new layer, call it Windows. Now when I paint in this layer, you're going to see that only those gaps where I paint are going to be filled in. So I'm just going to get my soft round oil brush. I'm just going to start painting. And actually you can see here there's a little eye tool which I can use to turn the stencil on or off at a glance. I'm just going to paint in the middle there, so let's just change the colour slightly. Something bright, go for a nice bright orange, and we'll just paint in. You can see those squares are becoming illuminated. Now I'm just going to hide it, and you can see what's happened. However, you can see when I paint without it showing, it paints anywhere. We can actually adjust this feature, so we can say keep stencil active when hidden. Now this is really useful if you're doing something like this. So I want to paint where the buildings are, but I don't want to see the stencil. So now it's locked in place, and I can paint only where the buildings are and illuminate just the area of the stencil. Now obviously I can't see the stencil at this time, but that's fine, because if I want to see it again and move it around, I can turn it back on. But you can see how useful it is just to paint where the buildings are, so I'm not making any mistakes or painting where I don't want to paint. And as you can see, that very quickly produces windows on my cityscape that isn't time consuming, it isn't frustrating, it's a really quick process. And obviously you can spend more time on doing this and being a bit more intricate with it, but when you just want that really quick cityscape to go in the background of something, it's so useful. So now I'm going to show you how you can create one of these stencils. So there's a number of ways, as always, but I'm going to use the selection tool and create a new layer. I'm just creating some basic squares, nothing too perfect here. I just want to show you the general rule, and then I'm going to go into the exact technique. I've just created a few squares and I've just painted over them. You can see there's a little bit of a difference here though. So I could have created all of the squares using the selection tool and then turned it into a stencil, but actually I want to make it as easy as possible for myself to make it detailed without having to spend all that time being detailed with my painting. So what I'm going to do is create a new layer, create one window, and then fill it in with paint. And if you notice, you can completely block paint it, or I can add a bit of variation here. So you can see there's some variation, and that just adds that extra little bit of painterly feel to it when you end up using it, because variation is always the key. So now that I've got that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control-Shift-D to duplicate those windows multiple times. I'm just going to move them around using T. So if I press T and select one, I can move them. And what I'm doing, I've selected all of them there, and every time I move them, I hold the Command key and deselect one. That'll be Control on the Windows. And I'm moving the remaining few into a new position. And every time I've got to press T again to select them, I can resize them if I want, but I want to keep them the same size. And I'm just moving them, deselecting, moving, deselecting. I've got my one window. So that's 13 windows there that I've created. And what I want to do now is just create a bit of variation, so I can select individual windows and turn them around and flip them. I can select multiple windows, turn them around and move them. Just trying to create the desirable pattern for myself. And now I'm selecting all of them, and if I press Command E or Control E on a PC, or I can click that little button at the bottom there, you can see, which is the merge icon. I've merged them all into one, and then I've duplicated that so that there's two of them. And then I can flip them around and move them. I can select particular sections using the lasso tool, move them around, creating that variation, because what you don't want is anything that looks like a pattern. It's got to look varied and random almost. So I'm duplicating, I'm moving different sections, duplicating again, then I'm merging, and now you can see I've merged it into one and I've shrunk it. And then I'm duplicating again and moving it, positioning it, again doing the same process, taking a few windows, cutting them out, moving them around. And I'm just going to keep doing that until I've got a pattern that I'm happy with. And this really doesn't take very long to do, and it's actually quite fun, because you're creating the pattern that's going to be your windows. You're creating the life of the city very, very easily and simply, but it can be really, you can actually spend a long time doing this, making it as detailed as you want. So you could have people in there, you could have different objects in there and things like that. So I'm going to merge that layer down one more time. I'm going to name it Windows. And then I'm going to hop over to my Stencils menu, click the little burger icon in the Stencils menu, and I'm going to choose Create Stencil from Layer Alpha. Make sure you choose Alpha, because that's what's going to choose the active and non-active pixels, and it does a better job than with Image, in my opinion. It enables us to tile it better without a border as well. So now you can see we've got our tiled active, and I just click there to remove it as well, which you can do. And I'm going to create a new layer now. So that original layer that I've got called Windows is the stencil that we created. So I'm turning that off. So now I'm just going to add the stencil, making sure our new layer is selected. And you can see there all the windows that we created with all those details, with the randomization and the different sort of level of paint in different corners of the window. You can see they've all come through, so you can see it's slightly faded on some angles. So now I can tile it, and I can shrink it, and looking at the image in the background, I can adjust the size to match what I think is going to be suitable for my painting. So I think quite small gives a sense of scale there. I can move it around just to adjust it for the best position. Making sure I've got Keep Stencil Active when hidden, and I'm just going to turn that little Show Hide button off and start painting. And you can see now instantly I've got windows. Now I obviously took quite a while to make that, but now you can imagine that every time I'm going to make a new cityscape, I can come back and choose that same stencil again, and every time I can put new paintings in. Switch colors as well, so it's just like any other layer, and you're just painting, and you can mess around with what colors you want to use. Again, I'm just experimenting here. This is not necessarily the best look for it, but you can see how quickly we've got windows. Literally, we brought the city to life incredibly quickly. Now, once you're finished painting, it's important that you remove the stencil. So you can see it'll be hidden. You've got to make sure you show it again and then go to remove stencil. You can also remove it from the stencil menu itself as well. And what I'm doing here is adding another layer, just turning it into a color dodge layer, and just using a spray brush just to add a little bit of glow to some of the lights. The reason I'm removing the stencil for this is so that the glow can be expand beyond the stencil. If I kept the stencil there, then the glow would just be within the stencil and it wouldn't have that glow effect, basically. So this enables me to keep that glow effect. But if I kept the stencil there, it would allow me to illuminate some windows slightly brighter than others, but they just wouldn't glow. But the point is that you can experiment with this now. You can do loads of different things. I mean, you could shrink the windows even more with the stencil and add paint elsewhere. You can do lots of different things that enable you to bring the city to life and also create variation from painting to painting. So I'm quickly just adding a little retrowave sun here in the background. And then what I want to do is show you how you can use images as well as stencils. So here's one I already have. So this is from a stock image of a cityscape that I brought in. Not a cityscape, sorry, of city windows on a skyscraper. So I'm now just shrinking those and I'm going to tile them. And I'm not going to use them as windows this time. I'm actually going to use it to give a bit of highlight to the structure, so it almost look like cladding. So I'm going to create a new layer here. I'll just call that window panels, and use a slightly sort of like a highlighted blue. So desaturate a little bit and just paint gradually over the existing buildings. I'm going to tile that as well. You can see because this is an image, it does sometimes add a border when you tile it. And that's what's so good about alpha, is it doesn't add the border. So just be aware of that. But I like the border in this instance because you can see it's creating those vertical lines. So those block vertical lines just add a bit of extra shape to my buildings as well. And I'm just again going in and just painting, and you can see that's adding all those different layers, a slight highlight to the buildings as well, giving a bit of extra depth. Bearing in mind, this would only ever be a cityscape that would sit in the backdrop, so I would paint something a bit more obvious in the foreground. Stencils as well. So as you can see, I'm going to the burger icon in the stencil menu and choosing Create Stencil from Image File. And I've selected this stock image of a circuit board, which has a lot of detail in it. May not be appropriate for this, but I'm going to use it to show you how it works anyway. So because there's a lot of contrast between the black and the colour in this image, it's managed to pinpoint only the colour and the black has been left out. So it's almost like the alpha channel. And so bringing that in, you can see I can paint that circuit board and all the detail comes through. I can also invert that as well. So you can see if I click invert, you can see the different effect of that. So now the circuits actually come through. You do have to be careful though. It might be worth upping the contrast on the image before you bring it in as a stencil, just so that there's more variation, or there's a bigger leap, sorry, between the blacks and the lighter or brighter parts of the image. You can see I've tiled that as well. And I'm just playing around with adding this kind of circuit board to the buildings to maybe add some detail, which you might not be able to tell it's circuit board. I mean, it might work, it might not, but hopefully you can see how that can add to what you're painting. And actually you can start building up a collection of these stencils that make not only your life easier when you're painting your images, but actually start to develop a bit of a style for you. It starts to be a sort of a recurring motif in theme in your paintings as well, and just to speed up your process as well. So there you go, that's the stencil tool in Rebelle 5. Please go and have a go. If you haven't used Rebelle already, what are you doing? It is amazing. If you've only been doing paintings, digital paintings with things like Photoshop and other kind of more graphical tools, you've got to get your hands on Rebelle, because it makes painting so much more realistic, so much more lifelike, and you can do so many more amazing things with them that give you that painterly look and feel to them. So please go and check it out, at least download the demo and see what you can do. I'll put a link in the description as well. Thanks guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.